Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Comic Book Wednesday. This is a world's finest collaboration between the forces of Stately Vaughan Manor, Michael K. Vaughan's BookTube channel, and here at Hyde Cottage, where Michael and I talk about the comics on which we have wasted our youths. and years ago, or however long in this forced march ago it was, all 10 of you who are watching these videos might know better than I do, in a weak moment, agreed to let Michael do the picking. Because this started out with me just horning my way into a feature that was already on his channel, Epic Comic Book Wednesday, where he talked about Marvel's full-color reprint line, the Epic collections. I thought, that sounds neat, I'll just invite myself in. And he has a million Epic collections, and I don't. So I figured it makes sense to let him pick what we're going to do Wednesday by Wednesday. And that freedom stayed true even when we opened our ambit to all of comics, not just the Epic collections and not just Marvel, but DC or broader comic book trends just in general. As you can see, there's a bit of peril involved in an arrangement like that, right? If you're letting someone as obviously unwell as Michael do the picking, then you might get a turd now and then. And I was lulled into a false sense of security because for a month or more, his picks have been not only good, but great. Stuff that I absolutely love, stuff that I very much want to talk about, stuff that I can understand being on the shelves of any comic book fan. And that all comes crashing to a halt today. Today, Michael picked the Marvel Comics run of horror comics. The Living Mummy, The Monster of Frankenstein, The Tomb of Dracula, The Dread of Night, Werewolf by Night, Man-Thing. He picked the whole misguided 70s run of Marvel horror. He has $150 1,000-page hardcover omnibus editions of all of this crap. Hence my comment about him being quite obviously unwell. I have a suspicion, I have voiced it before on Epic Comic Book Wednesdays, that Vaughan Manor is actually Arkham Asylum. I'm not going to push that. Instead, we're going to talk at least a little today about Marvel's detour back into horror comics. I say back because for a long time, a time that also is commemorated in 100-page, $150 hardcover and omnibus editions in Michael's collection, for a long time before Stan Lee reinvented superheroes, monster comics were everything. They were the hit. They were the belle of the ball. Fing, Fang, Foom, or Groot, or a million other. Monster comics were everything. And even then, even back then, I thought they were just tooth-grindingly boring. But once they gave way to the era of superheroes, the modern era of superheroes, I was perfectly happy to see them go. Them and romance comics and even Western comics, I was happy to see go in favor of characters who can punch holes through concrete or things like that. But then in the 70s, Marvel decided to flirt with this stuff again, and they brought out a whole slate of horror stuff. They even had some black and white horror magazines. There was the zombie and the mummy and the werewolf and Dracula, of course, and Frankenstein's monster. And Michael starts off his video today. I will leave a link to his video down below. He starts off his video today by doing what he always does when he's in trouble. And that is to hide behind a vampire. Something is coming up from below. He hides behind what people always do when they're trying to defend this crap, which is the Tomb of Dracula, which had brilliant Gene Colan artwork from start to finish, and lasted a long time, far longer than any of the other pieces of garbage that came out in Marvel's horror line from the 70s. The Tomb of Dracula, as Michael and I have talked about on this channel, is very well worth your time. It is well worth finding and reading. It is premium, hysterical, purple prose melodrama with great artwork all throughout. That is not true for any of the other exponents of the 70s Marvel fad. That is not true for any of the others. All the rest of them are crap. very much including the artist who gets celebrated from the beginning of Michael's video to the end, Mike Plug, who couldn't draw his way out of a wet paper bag, and who isn't good enough to draw a Kryptonian. If you're not good enough to draw a Kryptonian, you're not a good artist. If your horror comic with a zombie beating up alligators or a living mummy who's got ripped abs attacking civilians in a museum, if you have a horror comic like that, and in the final act when people are being confronted, it's sunlight or a stray bullet or a mystical scarab that saves the day instead of someone from Krypton, then you're writing a bad comic. Just simple as that. And that's the reason why these things fail, because they are boring. They are boring and ineptly done. They're horribly written, horribly drawn. They're just a waste of time. The idea that these things are in 150-page hardcover omnibus editions is bad enough. That idea is made even worse by the fact that there are people like Michael out there who will buy those omnibus editions and have them on their shelves. But the criticism of the 1970s Marvel infatuation with horror titles runs deeper than just how bad the individual comics are. All of the individual comics are bad. There's never been a good Man-Thing story, no matter what your fanboy heart says. There's nothing worth revisiting in The Mummy or The Monster of Frankenstein or anything like that. My favorite horror subgenre, the werewolf story, totally ruined, totally made boring and inept. My kid could do that in Werewolf by Night, issue after issue after issue, even when I was drawn in at the newsstands by both the werewolf premise and sometimes a gorgeous Gil Kane cover. Issue after issue, just god-awful garbage. But this video is not just about how bad the Marvel Comics flirtation with horror comics in the 1970s is. Unfortunately, we have to talk about causes. And the reason why the Marvel 1970s horror comics are crap, is because the 1970s were crap. Okay? The 1970s were crap. We had crappy crime. We had crappy air pollution. We had crappy presidents. We had crappy world leaders. We had a crappy pope. We had crappy sports. We had crappy movies. We had incredibly crappy books. Two things saved the 1970s from being just one unmitigated pile of crap. One, some of you may have heard from your grandparents, it's absolutely true, the sex was very, very good. The last time that the sex was very, very good. And two, no denying it, there's no denying pictures, our hair never looked better. But aside from that, crap from beginning to end, including, unfortunately, superhero comics, which I'm sure we're going to be getting to. I bet Michael has at least $10,000 worth of superhero omnibus editions on his walls at Stately Vaughan Manor, commemorating the crappy superhero comics of the 1970s. I'm sure that he does. Now, there's some fond memories in those comics. I definitely have some fond memories, but the horror line is not among those fond memories. The horror line is awful. If you have watched Michael's video, as you should, and you are at all tempted by his vaporing about how great these things are, if you're at all tempted to maybe go on eBay and pay $50, $70, for all I know, considering how often it's happened with things that Michael and I have picked on Comic Book Wednesday, for all I know, these things have become collectible and you'd now be paying $500 for some of the anthologies that he waves around in his video. If you're at all tempted, watching his video, to try it, don't. Just don't do it. It's just crap. That's all that it is. It's just crap. The only exception is the one we've covered already in Comic Book Wednesdays, which is Tomb of Dracula. Tomb of Dracula has, I think, a big anthology of its own and a couple of poorly made paperback anthologies. It's very much worth your time to find in reprint. Very much. It's very, very good. One, a really strange, but a really good iteration of the character of Dracula. You won't be sorry. You will very much be sorry if you force march your way through Werewolf by Night or The Living Mummy. Just awful. Absolutely awful. And in case any of you fanboys out there are wondering, if I extend that to the one sort of grasp that the Marvel's 70s horror infatuation made on actual superhero territory, in case you fanboys are wondering if I extend this, in other words, to Moon Knight, I most definitely do. Moon Knight is a garbage character. It's a garbage concept. It was a garbage execution from beginning to end. He is not the lost, cool brother that you're all looking for in the comic book world. And he won't be on the big screen either. All right? All right? So I want you all to wake up, smell the coffee, get a haircut, and buy a Superman comic. Oh no, actually, I don't want you to do that in 2022. Maybe next week. Michael doesn't tell me ahead of time what he's going to do. He tells me a little bit ahead of time, and then he turns down the volume so that he doesn't hear the screams. And that's all the preparation that I have. I have no idea what we're doing next week. The only place lower that we could go than Marvel's, there are a couple of places that we could go that would be even lower. Marvel did something called the New Universe, for instance. For all I know, and I'd be willing to bet a Boston cream pie on it, Michael is a big fan of the New Universe. Probably has whatever anthologies are made. We could do that. We could also go even lower and do war comics. I'm sure that he has a huge number of $150 anthologies on war comics. They might even be worse, but I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they wouldn't be. And I guarantee you, if we do war comics, he's going to do the same tactic that he did with these crappy horror comics. He's going to pick the one war book that is actually brilliant. The one war book that you really should go and read, which is Joe Kubert on Enemy Ace, where the hero isn't even American. Beautiful, great, fantastic stuff. I guarantee you, if he picks the crappy war apologia, he'll go to that first and hide behind it. I'm hoping not. Of course, I'm hoping not. I wouldn't even mind a detour into Westerns. I've had fun with Marvel Westerns, but when Michael says in his video that these things are fun, he's dead wrong. Maybe even undead wrong. So we're going to leave it at that. This is one of those occasions where Michael and I do not agree. The Marvel 70s flirtation with horror fascination was a total failure except for Tomb of Dracula. And we have already covered Tomb of Dracula separately. We've given it the separate attention that it deserves. So the 10 of you that are watching these videos, you've now got a little fur flying in the air, and we're going to have to hope for a little bit of peace and comedy next time. So we'll find out next Wednesday what we're doing. Hopefully we're back to tights and flights, which is what comics were made to be. I'll find out, and I'll let you know. Thank you.